Now that we've reviewed the whole technical aspect, let's put it into play. I think the best way to show what all these little toys do is to listen to it with the ABCD bypassed and then listen to it with it in. So, Fernando, why don't we play this song? This is a great song by the Como Brothers. It's called Feelin' the Night, which I've just recently mixed. Let's try it. Let's see what we got. Play the song as is for a little bit, maybe go into the first chorus.
Sure.
You're long gone from the disaster, but the wreckage wasn't left behind. Can't make time move any faster. It moves slowly when it's on your mind. Then the hours start to feel like days, and the sun starts to beat you down. You can hope for another way, or just dance when the moon comes out. Feeling the night, bearing the cold, coming alive because you're on your own. Leaving the fight, letting it go, taking a drive out on the lonely road. You were hanging from the gallows, then a fire broke and set you free. Are you happy you can breathe?
This is the mix with ABCD, all the processing in. The ABCD, what I've got going for the sends, what I've got going across the bus, the master fader. So why don't we start off by listening to a section, maybe going into verse 2, where there's probably a lot more going on. And primarily in this song right now, we're listening to A, that's across all the pianos and synths and stuff, and then B, which has all the drums and bass and any percussion that might be in there. There's also a little bit of C going on, which is the guitars, which I think we have guitars in here.
Acoustic guitar.
Acoustic guitar. Okay, so let's just listen to it with the ABCD bypassed. So let's put it in. During the verse, it'll go from processed to unprocessed.
You were hanging from the gallows, then a fire broke and set you free. Are you happy you can breathe now? Are you sad because you're on your knee? You were hanging from the gallows, then a fire broke and set you free. Are you happy you can breathe now?
What you're hearing there is the difference between that slight glue where there's some movement and where it's just free flowing. Let's go to a chorus where there's more action going on and see. This is going to be with everybody in.
Feeling the night, bearing the cold, coming alive because you're on your own. Feeling the night, bearing the cold, coming alive because you're on your own. Feeling the night, bearing the cold, coming alive because you're on your own.
This is very new to me, doing this bypass, because I haven't thought about what it's like without this processing in years. So my first reaction when I'm hearing everything bypassed is that it sounds flat. It just doesn't have the natural movement. I might be moving faders, I might not be moving faders, but when I take it out, there's a bit of a depth that disappears, a little bit of the width, but it just feels a little flatter to me. It doesn't sound like there's movement. And of course, the whole thing about what I do is bringing the emotion out of a song, either by my using my hands or by the use of the whole Brauer's approach, which we're talking about earlier, where when you push into these compressors because you're mixing into compression. When you do it just right, it bounces back a little bit. And so with that in mind, let's hear this section again and see if you're feeling a little bit more of this movement going on and this extra little depth that happens.
Feeling the night, bearing the cold, coming alive because you're on your own. Feeling the night, bearing the cold, coming alive because you're on your own.
If I were just to be listening to the music without doing any thinking, which is generally how I mix, my body would move differently. I can tell right now that with everything in, I have a kind of an up feel. It just has me moving. While the other approach with everything bypassed just kind of lays there. And so it's quite often it's what your body is doing. It's how it's reacting to the music without you thinking about it. It's like you don't force yourself to mix on the upbeat. I know it's just a natural thing. And then you don't tap your foot unless something makes you want to tap your foot. So here's a perfect example of where all the subtleties of these different compressors, where they're individually, they've got a groove going with the drums and bass that are not being affected by the guitars or the vocal. Everybody's just happily, harmoniously working together. And the result is just it just feels good and I'm just bopping along. And again, there's this additional emotional movement going on. It's not supposed to be night and day, but in music, the more subtle stuff can just be a huge difference. It doesn't have to be wow, but that subtleness about the wow is that I just feels better to me. That's the only thing we're looking for here. I'm not trying to, reinvent the wheel. We're just trying to have the song become just a little bit more dynamic with a little bit more depth on its own without my having to touch the faders. This is a prime example. I'm glad this happened because I had no idea whether this was going to work or not, because I never do this, but it looks like I haven't wasted my time or yours on explaining all this. Now it's time to build the mix. What I like to do first is listen to the rough and get my ideas. Usually during that period of time, I'm thinking of what I like about the rough mix, what I don't like, and generally, what are the most important 3 elements in any one section? Because I'll probably build the song up starting with that. I don't always start with the drums and bass. I start with what's really important to me. If, for example, they were playing it in a little cafe, they don't have the whole band and everything, what are the most important elements that gets the message of the song across? Let's hear the rough mix.
You're long gone from the disaster, but the wreckage wasn't left behind. Can't make time move any faster. It moves slowly when it's on your mind. Then the hours start to feel like days, and the sun starts to beat you down. You can hope for another way, or just dance when the moon comes out. Feeling the night, bearing the cold, coming alive because you're on your own. Leaving the fight, letting it go, taking a drive out on the lonely road. You were hanging from the gallows, then a fire broke and set you free. Are you happy you can breathe now? Are you sad because you're on your knees? Now the crowd is fixing on your gaze as the silence starts to feed your doubt. There's no time left for you to waste. Chase the stars until your legs give out. Feeling the night,
feels good. It's a good song. What I'll do now is start discovery, putting the tracks up. I've already mixed this song once. I know it pretty well. But I'm just going to build it up. And I think instead of starting at the intro, I'll probably go into maybe a chorus where there's more going on.
Feeling the night wherever it goes, floating along to where the wind is blown. Feeling the night, bearing the cold, coming alive because you're on your own. Leaving the fight, letting it go, taking a drive out on the lonely road. In the morning you can leave, roll your heart back up to sleep. Feeling the night wherever it goes, floating along to where the wind is blown. Feeling the night, bearing the cold, coming alive because you're on your own. Leaving the fight, letting it go, taking a drive out on the lonely road. In the morning you can leave, roll your heart back up to sleep. Feeling the night wherever it goes, floating along to where the wind is blown. Feeling the night, bearing the cold, coming alive because you're on your own. Leaving the fight, letting it go, taking a drive out on the lonely road. In the morning you can leave, roll your heart back up to sleep. Feeling the night wherever it goes, floating along to where the wind is blown. Feeling the night, bearing the cold, coming alive because you're on your own. Leaving the fight, letting it go, taking a drive out on the lonely road. In the morning you can leave, roll your heart back up to sleep. Feeling the night wherever it goes, floating along to where the wind is blown. Feeling the night, bearing the cold, coming alive because you're on your own. Leaving the fight, letting it go, drive out on the lonely road. In the morning you can leave, roll your heart back up to sleep. Feeling the night wherever it goes, floating along to where the wind is blown. Feeling the night, bearing the cold, coming alive because you're on your own. Leaving the fight, letting it go, taking a drive out on the lonely road. In the morning you can leave, roll your heart back up to sleep. Feeling wherever it goes, floating along to where the wind is blown. Feeling the night, bearing the cold, coming alive because you're on your own. Leaving the fight.
It doesn't take long just to get a groove, especially when you start with the essence of the song. You heard what to me was important. You see me throwing faders up and then putting it back down because it's like, you know what, that's a support. I'll bring that up later. And then at one point, when it felt just good and now it's time for the rhythm, I bring the drums up and they fall into the right place. They're not too loud, they're not too quiet, because I know where they need to sit within the song, because I'm working around what the melody is and what's important. And then you heard me bring up a bit more of the 4 on the floor. That's a trigger that I had, a kick and a snare, just to give it a bit more of a disco-y feel that was a bit different than what they had given me. So just enhancing what they've got. I almost never replace what they've given me. I just like to enhance whatever those elements are. At some point when I'm writing all this, remember, I'm mixing into compression. So it feels good to me. It feels like it's pumping. But am I going a little too far? Am I not going far enough? And this is where going to VCA 8 comes into play, because now I'm going to listen to it and I'm going to start bringing it down. And then you'll see that if I open this up, I'm going to see how hard the drums and the other instruments are hitting my multibus. That's down a couple of dBs from where I was. And what you heard me doing is going too far, where you just heard it actually break up and distort. So, but I'm just going too far. You go too far, you go too little, and then you find your spot right in the middle. And then where it felt good to me is just at one particular spot. And sometimes I'll make up with the volume, bring it volume back up, so I don't think, well, it was better when it was a little louder, because psychologically and acoustically, that'll mess with your head. I'll do it one more time. I'll play it where I originally had it, which was, I think, a little bit louder, and then we'll see how it sounds brought down a little bit better. So right at that point, which is actually even lower than I had it just in my previous play, now I feel like the drums, everybody is just really punching forward in a happy way. There's no kind of bit of a control. It's a happier sound. And sometimes that's what you're looking for, and looking at what you're doing is never going to be helpful. Your eyes will always deceive you. It's best to do all of this with your eyes closed, just sitting there in the middle, just chilling out, lower it all down, bring it up, go back and forth until there's a point where you physically feel good. And then you can make it up with the volume that you're listening to, whether it's in your headphones, whatever, and just go, okay, all right, this feels good. What am I looking for? I'm looking for a point where it just opens up. It just feels a bit more dynamic. And in essence, am I feeling the song it's a song talking to me a bit better, right? Because all this is based on feel. I don't care. Yes, this is an interesting tool. It's too complicated. It's wacky. But at the end of the day, when things are just right, you can hear how all this is working together. What's the result and what's the goal? That I don't really have to do much. It just helps, plays with me as I'm mixing. And so at this point, I'm like, all right, I'm happy at this level. So it's very important at some point where you're feeling good to go over here to your master and just bring it down a little bit and just play with it and see if there's a better position. Because sometimes as you're building your mix up, you tend to want few things a little harder, and it slowly adds up. Even though individually things are independent from each other, you're still mixing into compression. So if you start hitting too hard, things are going to resist. And remember that picture of the visual I had of you pushing into that rubber sheet. I'll do exactly, to me, what it feels like. Right now, this is what the mix feels like to me, right? In the general feeling of the attack and the release. It's just like this constant little movement going on. But what happens when I push it too hard? So when I was pushing into the mix too hard, it wasn't giving back, right? It's just kind of staying in there. And so that makes the whole sound smaller, because it's not, the whole purpose here is that it should be playing, it should be bouncing. It's like you're throwing something against the wall. It's like a tennis ball. You throw it in and it comes back to you. And if you're pushing too hard, you throw the tennis ball and it just kind of sticks in there. It almost looks like memory foam, boom. So you don't want that. You want the music to be flowing and being dynamic. So this is the function of assigning everything to one subgroup master before it hits the master bus. Now I'll just play from the top and see what else I can do.
You're long gone from the disaster, but the wreckage wasn't left behind. Can't make time move any faster. It moves slowly when it's on your mind. Then the hours start to feel like days, and the sun starts to beat you down. You can hope for another way, or just dance when the moon comes out. Feeling the night, bearing the cold, coming alive because you're on your own. Leaving the fight, letting it go, taking a drive out on the lonely road. You were hanging from the gallows, then feeling the night, bearing the cold, coming alive because you're on your own. Leaving the fight, letting it go, taking a drive out on the lonely road. You were hanging from the gallows, then a fire broke and set you free. Are you happy you can breathe now? in the night.
You know, it's mixing. Here we are. It took 5-6 minutes to build up a mix. You can see that I was focusing on what the essence of the song was. I chose one section where pretty much everybody is playing to build it up, and then I'd go to the top, and then I'd start to tweak. There's no automation on yet, right? This is more like a discovery. So some things are out of place, but the essence of what's going on, the excitement for me is happening here. And then at the point where I really learn the function of where the hooks are, what's building the hook, what are the little side show going on, all those things, then I'm going to start really just fine tuning. That's where really now the mix starts to conform. And you can see that at some point when I'm building up the mix, I like to see where am I at since I'm mixing into compression, and I go a little too loud, I go a little too quiet, and I find a nice spot where it just feels like it's opening up. And as it turns out, I was down almost 4 dB from my initial mixing compression going on. So this is why it's important to try that. And you can see it, you can hear it. And it's important to do this with your eyes closed, because your eyes will deceive you. And it's also why I keep the monitor to my right and not in front of me. I could easily I've got a big monitor in front of me right now, but it's off because I don't want to be distracted by other things going on. I just want the music between these two speakers. That's the only thing I really want to be looking at when I do have my eyes open. So here's the process. It's a simple one. It is a complicated setup, and many of you may not have all the toys necessary, but you get the idea, and you can try your own approach to it. But the function here was just to reveal how I go about it. In the past seminars, I started with just on the board. And then as I learned how to go hybrid, I started teaching how it was the hybrid. And it's only in the last 2 years that I really gotten to the point where I'm super comfortable going in the box, because you can see I only have a few pieces of gear sitting around here because I just don't need the other ones. And if I needed them, they'd be here. At no point am I doing this like, wow, I wish. If I wish, then I can get it. But I'm really happy with this approach, and it's so efficient, it's so fast. For what's going on today, this is perfect for me. I like it, I'm happy, I'm not compromising, and this is a Brauer Eyes approach, getting it emotional.